So Doctor Who is back for a second season with Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. Following on from a mixed but ultimately underwhelming first season last year, Season 2 is looking to conclude the Pantheon storyline. And you know what, from everything I've seen, we could be in for a bit of a banger, you know? But with all that said, let's get into the actual review. The robot revolution wastes no time getting into the action. Right from the offset, we're introduced to our new companion Belinda Chandra, brushing through her past job and home life before getting swept away into the adventure. I thought the pre-credits did a good job of establishing and setting up the story well, even if what was happening on screen was completely bonkers. Belinda is woken in the night as robots break into her flat-share apartment, vaporise the cat, which, come on man, you didn't have to do that, and then take her away to their bright yellow rocket, all to the amusement of bystander Mrs. Flood, who, yes, is also here for some reason. I don't actually think we get the title sequence until about 7 minutes in, where everything after is set off-world. I thought the 50s retro-future aesthetic lent itself really well to this story. Very visually striking, I thought the red robots looked fantastic, everything popped from the rocket to the planet's world design, and I loved its use of lighting and colour throughout. The story definitely felt a lot more ambitious in what it was trying to achieve compared to other Russell openers, almost feeling like a 60s Who classic but with new Who pacing. And that's both a positive and negative. I'd say I actually quite liked the faster pacing when we started. It kept everything flowing quite nicely, it felt quite bouncy and high energy, which is what you want from a season opener. However, the story does suffer from its runtime, balancing what are just too many ideas and characters into 45 minutes of television. This and Space Babies almost have the opposite problem for me, where I think within that story it would linger on a bit too much between scenes. There was a lot of stopping and starting, the Doctor spouting exposition, and I'm glad to say that we don't really have that here. However, the robot revolution never stops. So when Sasha 55, a character who acts as the emotional crux for the story, is killed off within the first act, I didn't feel anything. The story just doesn't allow for that. As soon as she says the line about wanting to see the stars with the Doctor, we know that she won't be sticking around, only to be disintegrated 30 seconds later. I think this episode honestly would have benefited from having an extra 5-10 minutes, not only to breathe, but flesh out some of those crucial moments in the script. Stuff like showing us the Doctor and Sasha's relationship over those 6 months could have done a lot for us when resonating with the Doctor's breakdown. Although completely understandable from an in-world character perspective, because we as an audience haven't seen any of that, it did fall flat to me. Also, I'm not one of these people who's against the Doctor crying in principle, but I do think having it be every episode is getting a little bit repetitive. Ncuti brings a vulnerability to the role that can be really powerful, but it's starting to lose its way, to the point where I'm almost convinced that they're artificially putting scenes into these episodes just so they can have the big sad moment each week, and I think that's a real disservice to him as an actor. Ncuti is far more than a one-trick pony, and we see a lot of his range throughout the story. As for the plot itself, it's fine. I'd say it's your typical RTD opener, very Smith and Jones-esque. It's silly, it's a bit camp in places, certainly an improvement over Space Babies, I'll say that. I thought having the robots being unable to hear every ninth word was a clever way to communicate the message, signalling the uprising, but then that gets completely dropped until the end. I feel like if you're going to establish something as important this early on in your plot, you kind of have to stick by it, otherwise it does feel like you're cheating us a bit. I really like the idea of the star certificate being the literal ownership of a star. It felt like quite a Moffat-y idea to me, where one of these companies like established titles were actually aliens. It does bring up the questions though of where Alan purchased the star certificate from in the first place, especially as I think they're supposed to be around 16 in that first scene. So are loads of people getting taken away to different planets, or what? Maybe I missed something there, I don't know. But anyway, the Miss Belinda Chandra bots take Belinda to planet Miss Belinda Chandra, where she is their queen, but also not really, because the robots have overthrown the world because of the AI generator who wants to convert Belinda into a robot and have her marry him. Are you still following? So let's talk about Belinda herself. It's still early days, but she definitely feels like a breath of fresh air coming off the back of Ruby. One of the criticisms I had last season was how there was no real conflict between the Doctor and Ruby. They just kind of hit it off right from the offset, and their relationship didn't really develop much past that. So I'm glad to see we're getting a bit more of a layer dynamic with Belinda. She's quite quick-witted and snappy, and I like how she pushes back against the Doctor. Like in the moment where the Doctor says "timey-wimey" and she responds, "Am I 6?" I also find it interesting that in her first scene, Belinda is wearing Ruby's jacket from Dot and Bubble. Now this could have just been a reused piece of clothing they had lying about the set, but I think it was very intentional to show the parallels between Belinda and Ruby. Belinda is obviously a lot older than Ruby, she's lived a life, is a lot more career focused, and isn't as easily won over by the Doctor's charm. However, from that first scene, it kinda shows that she wasn't too dissimilar to that of Ruby, having people in her life like Alan make her the person she is today. Look, nothing this blatant is done by mistake. This is Russell T Davies. Even if the payoff is bad, he's definitely thought about it 100 times over in his head. I mean, I wouldn't even be surprised if, say, in the flashback episode, there's a scene where one of them hands it over to the other for whatever reason. Another thing I'll say on Belinda is that I'm so glad that she isn't going to be a mystery box character. That was one fear I had going in having seen the trailer, but luckily no, they're not doing another Impossible Girl type arc. The character who we met in Boom is no more than a future relative, and I'm okay with them referencing that. Let's get on to the Doctor himself. I thought Ncuti shined throughout this episode. He definitely feels a lot more comfortable in the role, and now having a more feisty companion by his side, I look forward to seeing how that shapes his performance going forward. One of my favourite scenes in the episode is at the end, when he's trying to convince Belinda to come with him, and she's just not having it. She doesn't want to be one of his adventures. And you see the Doctor is physically taken aback in the moment. He's not used to this, and seeing the charm and smile fade away was a really interesting look into Ncuti's incarnation. The Doctor almost wears his smile like a mask, and I love that. But getting back to the story itself, there's always a twist at the end. So it's revealed that the AI generator doesn't actually say AI, it's Al, and that it's Belinda's ex Alan behind the robot revolution. Yeah, I'm incredibly mixed on this ending. On one hand, I quite like how they tied it into Belinda's character journey, and how everything linked together with the time fracture, but as an actual in-universe reveal, I don't think it worked for me. It feels like it's trying to be more clever than it actually is, when in reality it's no different to stuff like the invisible signpost on Ruby Road, or the Sutek anagram in The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Like, when you break it down, just like Susan technology, Alan generator doesn't actually mean anything. I don't think it's as bad as those other two examples, but it is quite dumb. Then again, this is a story with big red stompy robots, so I can't really say that it doesn't fit the tone. Also, his actual design itself is brutally horrifying. As for the character of Alan himself, similarly to that of Sasha 55, I think we needed to spend more time with him, particularly when it came to exploring his appetite for control and power. I thought all of the stuff with him and Belinda at the beginning was handled pretty well, showing him as this awkward guy, but through little comments here and there, you could start to build up the type of person who he was. But then that's all we see of him until the reveal. We jump from having last seen this guy who was a bit of a dickhead to now, hey, by the way, I've enslaved this entire planet and made these robots my bitches. Also, Belinda, will you marry me? And it all feels a bit too much. I don't want to say that Alan feels two-dimensional as a villain, because there's definitely good stuff there. It's just badly distributed and underbaked. Like with a lot of these previous examples I gave, it doesn't reward its audience, so past the initial shock value in the moment, it doesn't feel satisfying or hold up on repeat viewings. My main problem is that what we learn about him comes after the reveal, and by that point we already know that he's the villain. I think we needed more time with him as a character to explore that side more. I get that he's an arsehole, but even going from that to having his first reaction to arriving on this new world being, kill this random guy, did take me out of it a little. Anyway, Belinda rightfully calls him a cunt, we get some exposition from Alan, before getting the line from Belinda, planet of the incels. And man, the way certain groups online have run with this, you'd think Doctor Who had dropped some deep commentary on incel culture when really, it doesn't. Yes, Alan is presented as an incel, but it's not really what the story is about. Alan being an incel isn't crucial to the plot, even if it does help create more of a rounded picture of him. I mean, given who a lot of the Doctor Who fandom are, I think it would actually be quite interesting if we had delved into that more. Maybe call out some of these people that no, actually, you are just a bit weird. But yeah, having previously been set up earlier on, the Doctor delivers the All-Star certificate to Belinda. They both touch, causing time to go funky. We get this brilliant sequence where the Doctor is thrown through Belinda's timeline. It almost gave me 1970s Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when they go through the tunnel vibes. More creative stuff like this, please. The sequence ends, Alan becomes cum, and Polish slurps him up, to Doctor Who kicking the air. Also, side note, but the robot's reactions in this scene is the funniest thing to come from this era. Overall, this episode is an odd one for me. I think the show definitely feels a lot more confident in what it wants to be now, and I did enjoy a lot of individual moments, but as a story it just doesn't come together for me in a satisfying way. I like the Doctor and Belinda's dynamic, and the season's hook does look interesting, so who knows. We'll see how this season shapes up. I'm still very on board to see what's to come. As for rating, 6.5 out of 10, 'tis alright. Big up my guy Polish, MVP of the story. And yeah, if you want to follow the rest of my thoughts on the season, then subscribe to my main channel. I'll be back on here for the finale, and Nick will see you next with his review of episode 2, Lux. Goodbye. Thank you.